Thank you to everyone who is tuned into our webinar. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy days to join. This webinar is about maximizing batch management. I'm your moderator, Nick Azad, and I'm joined today by two of my fellow Parsec colleagues, Corey Vodbarka, our manufacturing expert and resident Lean Six Sigma Black Belt, and Christopher Gray, our key applications engineer. To quickly bring you up to speed on who Parsec is, we've been in business for over 30 years with a dedicated focus exclusively on developing manufacturing operations management software, which you'll hear us abbreviate MOM. Our TrakSYS solution platform is designed to measurably help our customers improve without the need for disruption and major infrastructure overhaul. TrakSYS has been deployed in thousands of locations in over 100 different countries. We've helped customers in a variety of industries, food and beverage, pharmaceuticals, CPG, and aerospace, to name a few, to significantly improve their manufacturing operations. Today, as I mentioned, we will be focusing on batch management. Now, in advance of the webinar, we reached out to a handful of our customers to get a gauge on common issues around batch, as well as topics of interest. To address that information, we will begin by discussing the challenges we heard, follow that up with a demonstration of how TrakSYS helps solve those issues, and then end with an open Q&A session. So to start off, Corey, my first question for you, from what we've discussed and what we heard, it sounds like in many industries, batch manufacturing is often treated as an art form. Can you talk about the types of challenges that presents to manufacturers?
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And in many, every industry has its different challenges, but in these areas of batch, you see a lot of liberty given to improvise in the process. So the operators, they work on tribal knowledge, and it's very difficult to have repeatable success when you're dealing with tribal knowledge, especially between different operators. This often results in materials needing to be reworked, blended with good quality material, or possibly completely discarded. So the cost of these non-conformances includes wasted man hours, raw materials, expediting, as well as potentially customer dissatisfaction.
Well, it's interesting because I imagine that repeatability would be something that manufacturers would strive for. Why hasn't the process become more data-driven?
I think everybody attempts to be data-driven, but many of these operations gather and log data without much success. Operators typically monitor and record, certain parameters. They do this on a pre-formatted paper form. So they'll collect information like supplier lot numbers, write down values that they capture from the machine control system. They'll do this on an hourly basis, and they'll log different irregularities like machine breakdowns or process interruptions. And they'll also record what the operator actions are taking place. Lab samples are run and recorded, and they're usually logged down as a pass or fail. And a lot of time and effort really goes into gathering and summarizing this. And sometimes they accumulate very large batch records with all the data that is captured. However, the data presented typically doesn't show the exact reason why some of the batches don't meet specifications and what's needed to improve the batch. So it can be very challenging and frustrating when collecting a bunch of information, and it's almost useful or useless at times in solving problems.
So it's not that data isn't being recorded in most cases, it's that the reasons for irregularities get lost in the reporting of batch outcomes. That ties into my next question for you, which is, how does recipe and batch management differ from traditional machine control?
So machine control really focuses only on the equipment and controlling these functions through automation. It really overlooks many of the key sources of variation, like raw material quality, how that differs from shipment to shipment, lot to lot. It overlooks operator variations that are covered through operator tasks and interactions with the process. In historized data, I mentioned a lot of people will log things down hourly, maybe as frequently as every 30 minutes, but they miss out on really historizing all of the data in between when interruptions could be happening. As well, they don't look at how this relates to the quality control results from a qualitative standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Batch and recipe management is a much more comprehensive approach to gathering electronic data and standardizing the procedures for compiling a quality batch. By capturing good records, operators can really determine the golden batch and standardize their procedures for a more repeatable process.
So the automatic or automated gathering of data gives manufacturers insight into the nuances of their batch processing. Can you dive a bit more into that?
Yeah, working with paper records is really time consuming, and it limits the real-time communication, the analysis, and the support that others can give to the process when not communicating in a real-time fashion. As well, the ability to track and trace materials for troubleshooting quality issues and conducting recalls can be very time consuming and inefficient. Manufacturers using electronic batch records can really benefit by saving time in the data collection, and really the analysis and use of the data can go much quicker because it's readily available, allowing the focus on improving their processes and lowering their cost of poor quality. They can also benefit from greater regulatory compliance with standards like GMP and 21 CFR Part 11. We'll talk a little bit about this in the demonstration on how we can support different types of regulatory compliance and all of the aspects of 21 CFR Part 11.
Excellent. Well, I don't want to postpone us getting to dive into that any longer than we need to. Thank you so much for your time and for sitting down with me. It's always a pleasure to get to ask these questions and really learn all of this material. So to dive in, as you discussed, I want to now turn things over to our applications engineer, Christopher Gray, who's going to show us what these processes look like in our TrakSYS platform. So, Christopher?
Thank you, Nick. As a quick reminder, if any of you have any questions relating to anything we just had a discussion about, feel free to drop us a question as we will be answering those at the end of the webinar. I'm going to be going into a product demonstration, but before I do so, I do have two quick slides for you guys to help ensure that everyone has a familiar baseline for the TrakSYS platform that I'm going to be demonstrating. TrakSYS, as an MLM software, is designed to be a brain at the heart of your operation. We're going to be gathering a lot of information from a bunch of different sources to be able to visualize that for you to help make it quality, actionable data. Looking at the screen, you can see the TrakSYS platform in the center. We're going to pull information from layers of automation, as you can see at the bottom, using things like OPC, APIs, and various structured data files to coordinate between us and the real-time equipment that you have to allow us to find flags, find times when there's issues and downtimes, and react to them accordingly. We'll also communicate with other business applications. So working alongside of the TrakSYS platform can be things like an ERP, quality system, planning a scheduling system, and so on. We'll work together with them to help enhance the data that they collect by taking information we have and coordinating with them, and we'll also utilize them to reduce the amount of work done in our platform. We can coordinate with an ERP system, for example, to pull production orders so we can show what needs to be run on a line and feed information back up to the ERP system once the job is complete. And of course, there's also a web browser portion. This is going to be the portal that all operators and users work through to be able to view the information, as well as to be able to interact with it. This will allow operators and plant users and corporate members to be able to go into the different forms, be able to view the information, ensure quality and accuracy, and provide additional context and their own knowledge. So you're not relying on tribal knowledge out on the plant floor. You have a place where you can not only record it, but also access it again in the future for the benefit or to improve your processes. For this demonstration, we are going to be looking at this TrakSYS platform in the context of batch management. So we're going to be looking at TrakSYS used as a real-time batch management solution to help you be able to gain control of the information that you have in your facility. We'll be able to take real-time product quality information, do traceability and root cause analysis, all within the scope of regulatory compliance, and be able to enforce various workflows based upon the data that we collect. Now, I'm going to hop over to a different screen right now. We're going to be going into an actual demonstration of the software. There we are, and seeing how this might look for an implementation. Now, as Nick mentioned, every type of batch management tends to be a bit of, it's an art form. Everyone has their own masterpiece that they're going to be looking for. What I'm going to be walking you through is my own masterpiece. We're going to be looking at my example of how I've decided to implement my batching process. But everyone has their own strokes and their own style, so if you were to implement the TrakSYS solution yourself, your screens would likely look different with different information. So this demonstration is based upon implementation experience, but it is just one example. Everything that you see is extremely flexible and all the screens can be changed. We are going to be focusing upon primarily the functionality that you get with a TrakSYS solution. Starting out with this first screen, this is going to be an example of a multi-line overview. It's a great way to see the different types of information that you might capture with a TrakSYS solution. You can see two separate lines that I'm currently looking at. These two lines are being shown to have different production orders running, their goals for the day, various metrics, in this case productive time, batch progress, and material capabilities, all significant portions of the batch management solution. The KPIs you may show and the different steps and information you want may be different, but it's a wonderful starting point to determine where you want to direct energy immediately when you visit a plant floor. Just looking at this screen, I can very easily see that my line 1 is not quite doing amazing on productive time. It's a bit below my target, but my line 2, with all the different red areas, is clearly struggling a bit more, so I can immediately take action upon the data collected already and direct my energy towards correcting line 2's issues. To dive into more depths of all these, I'm going to click on this first tile. We're going to look at my line 1. We're going to start with a couple screens. First, from an operator perspective, I'll walk you through how to do things like starting a job in the software, being able to track and see different alerts and track the steps of the process, as well as some other interactions like completing tasks and journals. Afterwards, we'll go through a couple example reports to show you what can be done with all this information that is collected from the operator's perspective. So to start with here, this is the operator-based screen. Currently, there's no batch running, so there's not a whole lot on it, but at least to glance through it, you can see that we will be tracking things like the active production order, alerts such as events and overages when machines go down or certain steps of a process take too long. There will be some summary information about the steps of the process, information about who is on the line for labor tracking, some nice metrics and KPIs to show basics of production state over time and critical parameters you may want to track, and then things like tasks and journals for operators to interact and input information into pre-configured forms. The first interaction I'm going to walk through is going to be the basic interaction of starting a job. Then we'll go through and see this screen with a lot more data and how it would more realistically look during a production run. Now, as an operator, I would come over here to this plans job link, select that, and you're going to see a bunch of different jobs that I can start. Now, these are all jobs that are currently already pre-listed, and this list can come from a number of different locations. As mentioned, we can work with other systems, so ideally, this information of what job we're going to run, as well as a lot of the product information, would come from an ERP system. We'd be able to integrate with it and display the information to the operator, so all they have to do is select what they want to do. However, if you don't have an ERP system or you don't have automation, of course, there are manual ways to create new jobs. We can import them from any system you have, and you can complete it in TrakSYS. For my implementation, though, I already have it pre-configured to implement from my ERP. From here, as an operator, I can select to start a job. This will allow me to give it a little bit of extra context as to what I'm starting. In my implementation, I ask for a batch name. I call mine and just number them simply 1. We can also do labor tracking and ask for what supervisor is running, ask for what operators are running, and of course, these can all incorporate any automation you have and any validations that you need. As mentioned, this does work in validated environments, so we can enforce logins based upon pre-populated lists. We can utilize things like badge scanners to be able to determine, according to another system, who is logged in, and we can even do validations through things like passwords. Now, hitting start would start my new batch process, and this would allow me to begin tracking the various steps of it. We're looking specifically for this example at producing an agile compound, but this does work for any type of processes you need. So in addition to working for a batch compound, we can also do it for things like clean in place, CIP. We can identify different criteria to automatically start jobs or limit which ones they can select. In this example, my next job is going to be an agile-based one. It's the same product as the previous, so therefore the short clean is enabled, the long is not, but we can also do things like require a critical one based upon certain amounts of time. So there's different criteria that you can use to enable and disable when certain processes are also allowed. Now we're going to hop back in just a second to the demonstration line 1 over here, and we're going to see a lot of information pop up and populate for me. Now on the screen currently, you can see that, there we go, we can see the different alerts and the different job information that is now populated. This is more like what you would see potentially in the middle of an actual production run. I can see the job I'm running, I can see alerts that have occurred, including operator acknowledgements that I'm requesting. I can see the steps that I'm currently on. In my case, my process is forward 13 steps, as well as various indications of where stoppages occur, where long steps occurred, and even things like critical parameter tracking in real time. Now, this is all very high-level data, but it's a wonderful starting point for an operator to be able to leap into other pages and look further into it. Looking at the screen, I can see where certain flags might be, where my speed may be low. I can see it's currently rising, so that's good. I can see where events occurred and I might need to acknowledge it, and where I have tasks that I need to complete. To give a couple examples of some of these interactions, you can see things like tasks. We can prompt operators to be able to fill out pre-configured checklists to say, for example, you need to have all your safety equipment available at the start of a batch. I can select the ones that were completed. I can view instructions if I have any questions of how I'm supposed to complete this. And I can do automatic user capture. I can do automatic pass-fail results and determine whether or not this task succeeded. This can be used to prompt workflows. That doesn't apply directly to the batch portion. That would fall into other solutions to the webinar. So we are going to end the task portion here. But this can lead to other workflows in the software as well that can go to further reporting. The tasks can be anything from simple instruction lists like that. They can be used towards SPC, doing simple instructions like capture a single sample value, and we can report against it. And we can provide any documentation necessary for any of these workflows, such as basic instructions or even document links as needed. This ensures that throughout any of these interactions, whether it be event-based ones, task-based ones, creating new journals, etc., you always have the information necessary to ensure that all the information collected is done accurately and can be done properly. Alongside of this screen, there are other supporting screens that are going to go with it. As mentioned, this is a very high-level screen that provides the jumping off point. For example, the steps in the center here. This merely tells me the step I'm on and what I intend to start next. If I need additional information, I can view on the left under this steps screen. On this screen, I have a lot more details of each individual step I'm intended to accomplish. And as I select each step, you'll be able to see the sequence of it, the actual planned duration, and then the actual duration I took to complete the step. Additionally, for any steps that have any type of material consumption required, you can prompt an operator to consume that material on that step as well. For the purpose of the demonstration, all these steps are currently sequential, but TrakSYS does support parallel processing. So mine are a simple 13-step process, but it does support a lot more complex workflows as well. In terms of material consumption, there are many ways that this can be accomplished and incorporated as well. For a simple one, I'm going to select this material button here. You'll see a very similar looking list of the materials I intend to consume, where I can track the material, how much I'm supposed to have, and how much I've currently already added. I can select to add new materials and complete a form that will say what I am adding. And I can simply either mouse or use my keyboard and key in a different value of what I intend to consume. I can use things like barcodes and scales to do pre-weighs and determine based upon barcode scan what I've already measured. Or you can just do simple scans and do a mixture of the two. For all this data entry, there's always the ability to do user verification, so we can use user information. You can use password verification, and we can add in any incorporation to things like Windows Active Directory, or if you have badge scanners, etc., to alleviate some of the operator interactions as well. There are plenty of ways that you can utilize this type of input for an operator. It doesn't have to be just this form as well. So to show one other example, I'll also show a pre-weigh version of material consumption. In addition to this simple setup where you are doing barcode scans, the pre-weigh can utilize things like the ERP system or your job schedule to determine what you need to consume. We can tap into things like a warehouse system to determine what materials are available and make for a much more validated and a much more intricate input setup. In this example, I'm going to do a pre-weigh for maltodextrin to say I need to weigh 5 kilograms for this upcoming job. My screen here is going to show me the different lots that are available in my warehouse. It's going to do some verification validation based upon expiration dates. And I'm incorporating a scale so the operator doesn't have to type in anything. They can simply select a button, whether it be in TrakSYS or on the scale, and utilize that to auto-capture the values. That way you can ensure accuracy of the numbers and ensure that it came from another source. All this information put together is going to create the full operator overview and all the report data that we collect. You'll have all the information of the process, what you intend to run, when steps took long. You'll have all the material consumption records. You'll have all the parameters and all the tasks and journals that go with it. From an operator point of view, this screen is going to give you all the information in real time. But alongside of that, of course, we're going to have this in a historical trending type view as well that you can use for reporting. So looking over on the left, if I wanted to view a full job set of information, I can come over here to the job overview report. I can pick any job from this list that I would like to view, simply select the overview button, and look at the report of all the product information that the operator recorded in those material capture screens. I can see all the step information from these step screens in a visual format. And I can see all the events and downtime losses that occurred during that batch. I can also drill down into this, viewing things like the specific products that are materials that were used. For example, I can see the two separate batches that were completed for this job and every individual material record that was consumed. I can also filter these and say, I want to see from a specific batch, I want to see a specific material, and it can highlight things and identify things like alternatives or overconsumptions and underconsumptions for you. This will also link into other solutions. As mentioned, this can link into things like warehousing for track and trace. However, that is in part of our inventory management webinar that is also available online for anyone who wants additional information. Continuing on to sticking with the batching topic itself, you can also do batch-to-batch comparisons. So if you're doing golden batch analysis and you know what your best batch is, you can use that as a baseline for the others, or you can simply compare batches, any batch that you would like. We can provide filters, things like picking specific products, picking specific dates, and using those filters, we can provide the different batches that are in that time range. As I select these batches, it will populate the different charts, allowing you to visualize them and compare them very easily. And in this case, I've opted to have a maximum of 4 batches, but you can compare as many as you would like. I can see things like their product information, so how big was the actual size, what did they consume, and I can see immediate flags such as these 2 batches using alternatives. You can track cycle times. I can see that this specific job seems to have the longest cycle time. There seems to be a large overage in the blending on this specific batch, and a couple other flags as well. And I can also see downtime duration, so when there were losses. This gives me a nice way to report against them and try to find any red flags that I may want to dive further into. In this example, I would probably look at the blue batch here because it has the longest duration and the longest amount of downtime. That one is linked to 4819. There's the button for it right here. If I select it, it takes me to the batch reports, and I can now drill down into it in much more detail for any of these individual sections. Now, that is the batch management solution, or at least one example of how it can be implemented. Of course, there are plenty of other features and functionalities that you can utilize in TrakSYS as necessary. This will tie into everything else in the software, as it is all one big MLM platform, but it does have the same look and feel, and all the different solutions will work together to help provide further context. For example, you can do a full report over the entire job if you would like, not just the batching portion, but including the tableting and packaging parts of that same job. So I can look, for example, for this specific identified job and see not just the batch reports that we were just looking at, but all the reports for its future jobs like the tableting and packaging portions. These do allow you to drill into them and once again do things like tracing, and it does touch into a lot of other components of the software. So this can be a standalone solution, but is obviously going to have the most power and impact when combined with the other functionality in the software. Just as a recap, there is one platform. The entire TrakSYS is a single integrated interface, but you are able to follow and solve any of these solutions and any issues that you see on the screen here. Today, we looked specifically at one piece of it, looking at the batching portions of its capabilities, but there are other webinars, other resources and documents available online for any of the other solutions.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Christopher. It's always so cool to see how easy it is to navigate and utilize all those functions within TrakSYS. All right, we are now at the point where we want to open up the conversation and address any questions you may have. So please feel free to write in, and we will do our best to answer as many questions as we can in the time remaining. Looks like we already have one in. So Corey, I'm going to address this to you. And the question is, what if my factory doesn't have much automation in place? Can I still use TrakSYS?
Yeah, absolutely. We have a variety of installations with clients, everywhere from world-class automation where the automation is feeding 100% of the information into TrakSYS. We also have installations with zero automation where it's completely manual, and they're still benefiting from real-time information and be able to interact, do analysis, and provide feedback, and really everything in between. So it doesn't matter where you are on the maturity level of automation, you can certainly utilize TrakSYS. And with IoT devices out now, adding automation and data signals is much cheaper and easier than ever before.
Awesome. We got another question that came in here. It says, I work in a FDA-regulated facility. Can TrakSYS support a validated environment?
Yeah, absolutely. TrakSYS currently runs in many of the big pharma companies and factories, and we've gone through the validation process, audits by those companies on every step of the process from development as well as implementation validation.
Excellent. So I got another question. I think this is addressed to Christopher. To be clear, the batching info can be sent to, say, a PLC and then used to execute automated batching?
Yeah, I can address that one. Yes, TrakSYS can be used in essentially two different modes. You can use us to either be a batch execution system, or we can use more as an observational one for recording purposes. If you're using us for an execution system, we do support OPC writeback, so you would have the capability to have recipes stored inside TrakSYS or another system, and then have us write that information down to your automation layer. So we can execute steps as well as pass in parameters, yes.
Excellent. I have another one for you, Christopher, that just came in. I saw that you can interface to ERP systems, say SAP, for example. Is this a standard interface or custom?
We can interface with essentially any system. We're a very, very open platform, partially by necessity, since MES and MOM systems typically come in far after the other ones. So in terms of ERP, SAP is a very common one we interface with. We do have some standard ways that we will typically attempt to integrate with it, but in reality, most of the time, every implementation is different, and a lot of it depends upon your network itself. So the connection portion is never going to be an issue. It's more of what formats and what protections you have around your ERP, and we are very flexible and good with working with those systems, especially SAP.
I have one more I want to bounce off you, Christopher. It says, how are the displays developed? Via built-in tools or customized via Visual Studio?
That can be a very in-depth one, so I'm gonna give a light answer to it. But of course, if you have additional questions or if that's not enough, be sure to follow up with it afterwards. The displays themselves, we have essentially three layers of them. There's content pages. Those are fully out-of-the-box ones that don't require anything other than mild configuration to develop. Those ones are great for a lot of the standard functionality. And then when you inevitably find that there's some stuff you want to change that you can't do by default, we do have a very extensive toolkit that is also configuration-driven to allow for further modifications. Everything you saw in this demonstration is specifically for demonstration purposes, so all these are built using purely our built-in toolkit, so nothing in it involved customized elements. As for the Visual Studio question, you are able to also use Visual Studio for some uses for scripting aspects of it. That's typically for more advanced, very customized implementation needs. And the vast majority of the work can all be done within the toolkits in the software.
Excellent. Corey, I've got one for you. It says, what are the hardware requirements for the platform?
Yeah, so this is a question we can probably handle best offline, but I'll hit upon a few things that I think will be helpful for the audience. TrakSYS is capable of supporting a variety of infrastructures, local server-based as well as cloud-based. So depending on that, we can have some discussions on what are the server requirements. I can supply some data sheets on the server requirements for that. I see you also had a question on how can I get a quote for this platform. Same thing, I think we can address that offline. We'll have somebody reach out and contact you to have a further discussion on your user requirements and how to move forward with what you're looking to achieve.
Okay, we got another question in here. It says, we need to pull from several ingredients within our ERP and consume them and add them to inventory to the blended chemical solution. How is that handled?
So it sounds like, just to make sure I interpreted it correctly, you have several ingredients and you essentially need to mix them into a final material and have it in inventory to consume later on. TrakSYS does have a very good material management solution where you're able to take materials and you can identify them as components and alternatives. So you can identify and say, I have a blended chemical I need, here's the standard size, here's the amount I need to be of each material to make it, and we can store those as items. It may be useful to look through our inventory and warehousing webinar as well, since that does fall towards that category. Essentially, you'd be doing the batching portion to mix them together, but the warehouse management solution would be the one that actually stores that for future use.
Excellent. Thank you, Corey, and thank you, Christopher. That's about all the time that we have for questions. So thank you to everyone who wrote in and to everyone that joined us here today. The answers to all the questions we received, not just the ones that we responded to, but the ones that were also asked, will be emailed out to you shortly. For anything else, please feel free to contact us at the email address that's on screen. And remember, you can always find out more about our platform, TrakSYS, on our website, which is www.parsec-corp.com/TrakSYS. Till next time, thank you, everybody. We look forward to speaking with you in a month.